Hey everybody, it's Jason McLaren with the Leadership Loading Podcast, and today we're talking about leading like a nuclear submariner. My guest, John Rennie.
Rennie,
Yeah, there you go. John is the co-founder and president and CEO of Peak Demand, Inc., premier manufacturer of critical components for electrical utilities. I'm sure we'll talk about that here in a little bit. He's also a former U.S. Navy Nuclear Submariner Officer and has made 7 deployments all the way up to the end of the Cold War. So good feedback there and leadership skills. Prior to starting Peak Demand, he led 8 manufacturing businesses for 3 global companies and is an author of the best-selling leadership book, I Have the Watch, and lead your organization like a nuclear submariner. That's all in the same boat, sorry. And then also the host of the podcast, You Have the Watch? No, Deep Leadership, sorry.
Deep Leadership.
And so yeah, welcome John to the show. Big introduction.
Great to be here.
There you go. So yeah, John, tell us a little bit about your background. Obviously, this being a veteran and first responder based podcast, we want to hear about your deployments and that sort of thing, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned, I was a submariner, and it was something that I wanted to do since I was a kid. And that sounds kind of bizarre and strange because nobody wants to be a submariner. No one wants to be locked in a metal tube for months at a time. But I did. I had 2 grandfathers that served in World War II. One was in the Navy and one was in the Army. And I sort of was just fascinated with their stories. And I was, that kid that always asked, my grandfathers what they did and how they did it. And they just tell me more and more. So I was that curious kid. And I always knew I would serve in the military. It's something I wanted to do. But for some reason, I got fascinated with studying or just learning about the submarines in World War II and all the different missions they went on and just crazy things that they did. And really, in a lot of cases, were important parts of how we had victory, especially in the Pacific. So, after reading those stories and stuff, I just said to myself, that is just the wildest form. It's just the wildest military platform you can be on, is being on a submarine underneath the ocean. And of course, then, the Cold War was in full swing and, the Soviets were our enemy. And, there was this back and forth between the submarines. And I was like, I want to do that. I absolutely want to do that. And so, to get on a submarine, I want to be a submarine officer, was you had to become an officer. You had to study something technical because you had to be qualified in nuclear operations. So I had to go to engineering school. I had to get good grades in high school, go to engineering school, get a commission in the Navy, get accepted into the nuclear program, get accepted in the submarine community. So there's a lot of work to be able to get there. And I was the first, in my family to even go to college. I didn't even know what an engineer was. I had to figure all that out. But, this long process of getting through college, getting through the whole nuclear officer pipeline, going through submarine school, getting to the fleet, and then becoming a qualified submarine officer. It's a long process, but eventually I achieved my dream of being on the submarines. Again, making 7 deployments. Just absolutely loved every minute of it. But then got out and went into corporate, like a lot of guys do, and then I was leading in corporate businesses for about 22 years before I started my own business. So ran a lot of manufacturing operations. Now I do that here by my own business with Peak Demand. So yeah, so it was one of like a childhood dream come true, but it was a lot of work to get there though.
Definitely, and great backstory there, and great history, and a good testament to your leadership skills and how you've made it to where you are today. And how long were you in the Navy?
I was in for 5 years active duty. Yep.
All right. Good deal. And so what, I guess being in the submarine corps, is that what they call it, the submarine corps? That kind of built you up for the electrical side. Is that how you got into the electrical field?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I got out of the military, I was applying for different jobs. I had 2 job offers. One was being in design engineering for a global electrical engineering company called ABB. They wanted to hire me as a design engineer, and that was in Florida, which is where my wife's family was from. And the other job was in pharmaceutical sales with Merck, and I didn't know anything about pharmaceutical sales, right. So I said, well, I have an engineering degree. Well, let's go be an engineer. So that's kind of how I got into the electrical field. And I've been in it, my whole career, essentially.
All right. And what leadership skills did you learn in the military that helped you, jump into the private sector as far as building business?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because, you think that the two aren't related at all, that, life on a submarine is completely different than business life. But actually, there were a lot of things that I learned, and especially as I got older, I realized it was kind of a really great place to learn leadership, because on a submarine at sea, you lock the hatches and you're stuck with the same people for the, typically we went 3 months, 110 days, we'd be deployed. And so you were stuck with the people that you were deployed with. So there was a lot of things you learn through that. One is you get to know and learn and love people. Everybody's unique, everybody's different, everybody's, the crews came from all over the country. We had all different religions, backgrounds, histories, but we all had a mission to do. And I think, getting a chance to spend so much time with people, we stood watches for 6 hours every day, with these watchstanders. And so it was enlisted and officers and senior enlisted working together side by side. And so we got to know each other, and we developed these deep relationships. We suffered together too. I mean, a submarine being deployed, you run out of fresh food, you stand these long watches, we operated sometimes in the North Atlantic during major storms. And there's all this things that you suffer together, and you built these tight relationships. And I realized when I got into business that those are really powerful skills, to be able to build relationships with your team and getting to know your employees and them getting to know you. And so I think that was a big takeaway that I learned early on. The other thing was, on a submarine, everybody is important, right? So it's funny because we take the most junior sailor, and one of the things that we give them as a duty, right, as a junior sailor on a submarine, is you compact trash and you shoot what we call shoot trash. And we have it looks like a little torpedo tube at the bottom of the submarine, where we actually would compress the trash and shoot it out the bottom of the submarine. Well, typically that's your most junior sailor that would do that work. Well, guess what that is? That's a hole in the submarine. So that sailor had to make sure he operated that trash disposal unit properly. Otherwise, we would all die. So every sailor was important to the mission, right? And our mission, do the mission and get home safely. Everybody was on board with that same mission. It didn't matter if you were an 06, you were an E2, right? Everybody had to work together to be able to safely operate the ship and get home, right? And so I think that has always stood with me as well, too, is that even my most junior employee is important to my mission, and to make sure that they all understand they're important to the mission. Versus, I think and I saw this in my corporate career, some managers would treat like production employees or call center employees like dirt, even though these are the most important people in their organization, not the purchasing manager. It was the person on the shop floor actually making the part and shipping it to the customer. So that always stood out to me. And so throughout my corporate career, I kind of always spent a lot of time on the shop floor with employees, making sure they understood what the mission was, and make sure they understood that we were all in the same, the same team working on the same goals, trying to break those, because one of the things I found in corporate is that there's a big difference between hourly and salary. And there's a big separation. And my job always was to bring everybody together onto the same team, because that's the way it was on a submarine. I think in some military organizations, there's officers, there's enlisted, and there's this big wide gap. On a submarine, it's like there's no gap. There's no room for special privileges for officers or senior enlisted, because we're just kind of stuffed in the middle too. And we all eat the same food. We wear the same uniform. We sleep in the same size rack. It's, no special privileges. And I guess I've always taken that in my mindset in my business jobs, like no special privileges for managers or leaders. We're in this, we're all in this together. We just have different roles to play.
Definitely. It's the old mindset, there's a old, mantra, treat the CEO the same as the janitor, or the janitor the same as the CEO.
Yeah.
When you're in the corporate sector. And and that's how I live by, if I'm walking down the hall and I see in my full-time job, if I see the president of the company there walking in the hall, he gets the same greeting as I give the janitor that's walking right behind him. It's not one of them where you stop and, try to make more conversation maybe with the president than you do the janitor, but also treating them the same nevertheless.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, when I, in my companies, the businesses I've run, I've always said the number one thing is to treat everybody with respect. And it's a big part of it. So I want people to treat their peers with respect, the people that work for them for respect, and their bosses with respect. So I think, if you want to be part of my organization, respect is the number one issue that I'm concerned about, because every person is important and vital to the mission of the company. And I think that more leaders should have that mindset, because I think we would treat people differently if we felt everybody was important.
Definitely. And especially now with the current political climate and things going on in the world at the time of this recording, there's a lot of stuff going on that if everyone just treated everybody the same, we wouldn't have those problems. But
well, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
And all right, let's talk about professional development or continuous learning. That's kind of what your current book or your most recent book is about. You have the watch, preparing yourself for, well, maybe not preparing, but honing your leadership skills. We were talking before we recorded. It's a daily journal where you can work on I'll let you explain it, but it's more like a workbook where they can work on their daily activities.
Yeah, one of the things that's frustrating with leadership is that we sort of take this is my observation from working 22 years in corporations, is that we sort of think of it as like an extra duty. Like, you're a really good engineer, we're going to make you engineering manager. Or you're a really good quality technician, we're going to make you quality manager. So we slap a title on somebody, right? And then we send them off to do their job. And what ends up happening is these young managers, they end up going back to their comfort zone. They're really good engineers. So they end up spending time doing engineering. They never really truly make that transition into leadership. And leadership is completely different, right? The leadership skills are different than engineering skills or purchasing skills or HR skills, right? When you move into leadership, it's a whole nother set of skills. And so we don't treat that very seriously in business. And what I mean by that is that, you might get, you get promoted, you might get like a 2-day session where you go to some leadership training, and then you're, okay, well, if you're lucky, if most of the time you're not lucky, you get a title and you get a nicer office, and then you're told to go do your job. And then you default to going back to your comfort zone, which is being a doer and not a leader. So I was trying to develop some way to be able to help somebody that's in that role as a new manager, or maybe somebody transitioning in from maybe one organization to another or one department to another, to make sure that they don't lose track on what their new role is, which is, you are a leader, you're not a doer. And so this particular book is written in a way that is a daily reflection for leaders. So it takes you through an entire year. There's 50 themes in the book, and every day you reflect on a different facet of that theme. Like, for example, one week is be present. And so every day there's something talking about, what does it mean to be present as a leader? And being present as a leader doesn't mean in your office with the door shut working on emails. That is not being present. Being present means get out of your comfort zone, spend time with your people, and walk around and talk to people, listen to people. And this is something that maybe seems basic, but many managers find themselves locked in their office, I call it in their bubble of their emails, their conference calls and their meetings, and they avoid people. And some people do that out of fear. They're afraid of what people might say. They're afraid they might be discovered they're not that smart, or they don't know everything. And so out of fear, they sit in their comfort zone. And so a lot of what this book is to get you out, get you with your people, get you thinking about what is it you want to do as an organization? What's your mission? What's your vision? And so, and again, it's not a one and done like leadership training. It's there with you for the entire year. So as you develop and hone those leadership skills.
Definitely. We'll put the link in the show notes below. And then that kind of reminded me of my reverse mentorship practice. Like you said, I try not to hunker down in my office unless I have some deadlines, but yeah, if I have a gap in my calendar, I'm out there in the field walking, looking for my guys, and just I'll ask them what they're doing, and if I I don't know everything about what they do, but I have, I'll see, show them what you're doing and let them check it out. Some of them think I'm, spying on them, but the others, most of them like it because they like to, give me a chance to see the front lines and go see what they're doing out there. So.
Well, there's a balance, and I talk about that in the book too, is, so we don't like the micromanager, right? That's everybody says, well, we hate the micromanager, but we don't like the absent manager either. So the micromanager is way too involved. The absent manager is, you can't find them. They're never around, right? And so either of those extremes are bad. And I know that because I've had bosses on both of those extremes. So you got to find that right balance. So you want to be present, right? And be around, but you don't want to be annoying. You don't want to be like, okay, there's John. Okay. Hi. Yeah. Same thing as yesterday, but so you've got to really find that balance. And that's really important. Leadership balance is something that, if you take any sort of actions to an extreme, it becomes a problem in business and in leadership. So you have to always looking for the right balance with your leadership. Like, for example, if you're too optimistic, right, then you're likely going to, you're going to make promises you can't keep. But if you're too pessimistic, you miss out on opportunities because you're afraid to fail. So there's always a balance that playing throughout leadership is trying to find that right balance between two extremes is something that I found the best way is to find that right position to be. And every one of those extremes causes a problem. I can list off a lot of them, but that's, but being present is one of those that can be taken to an extreme as well.
Definitely. All right, John, what would be your one piece of leadership advice to someone entering the leadership field?
Yeah, I would say this is that never forget that leadership is about three things. It's about people, influence, and a goal. Our roles as leaders is to influence people to get something done. What is the big goal? What is the mission? What is the goal that we're trying to get accomplished? It's not about emails. It's not about meetings. It's not about, to-do lists. It's about people and engaging and motivating people to get things done. And as I like to always say that leadership is a people business. It's all about the people. And if you can remember that, you'll be about 10 steps ahead of most leaders.
Great. And how can we get a hold of you if we want to reach out or get your books or check out your podcast?
Yeah, everything is at jonsrennie.com, and all my links to social media, all my books are on there, and a link to my podcast, which is Deep Leadership. Everything's at jonsrennie.com.
All right. Well, thanks, John. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
There are thousands of leadership and management podcasts to choose from. We're glad you chose the Leadership Loading Podcast, a Go Heroes production. If you'd like to support Go Heroes Inc., visit www.goheroes.org. And with that, it's time to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for listening. We sincerely hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Let's all grow together. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. Leadership inspired.